Welcome back to the Fine Line podcast. A lot has happened this last week, as I'm sure a bunch of you know if you've been following the case. Our full jury has been selected, including alternates, and an opening statement starts today. Let's see where this all heads. It's been pretty jam-packed and emotional so far. As you know, there's a fine line between a system that's failed a person and one who takes the life of others. A diagnosis missed and a life dismissed. This is the fine line. Come and walk it with me. So on July 20th, last Monday, jury box in Plymouth Superior Court started filling with strangers who are about to be handed one of the toughest questions a jury can face. Was this a murder, or was this a mind that had completely broken down? Mental illness. I'm talking about the Lindsay Clancy trial, as you know, and this week is officially begun. So it took about 4 days for our jury to be selected, and I think by all accounts, it's actually faster than a lot of the legal analysts and individuals thought that it would take, especially compared to some other high-profile cases in Massachusetts and otherwise. So here we are, Thursday, July 23rd. They've landed on 18 people, 12 women, 6 men, 6 alternates. Now, at this point, nobody, not even the jurors themselves, know which of the 12 will actually deliberate on this case. That gets revealed only after all the evidence is in. I think the vetting process for these jurors tells you a lot about what this trial is really going to be about. Potential jurors were asked about their own experience with depression, anxiety, mental illness. I think it's notable to be aware how many women are on the jury, seated for the jury. I think that, that's going to be impactful. Dozens were excused, as I'm sure you could imagine. Some got emotional just with answering the questions that were asked of them in voir dire. So that's the jury selection process. Before opening statements even happened today, what we had to go through is a little bit of a, fight in the courtroom. And buried within that fight was a very interesting fact. It's a new detail, genuinely a new detail that we didn't know about Patrick Clancy. Patrick, Lindsay's ex-husband, as we all know, made that 911 call the night the 3 children's lives were taken. And he had asked through his attorneys that the judge restrict access to some of the most painful evidence in this case. So that's the autopsy photos. So the postmortem photos taken by pathologist, medical examiner after death, and crime scene photo images, as well as a 911 call. He wanted all of that. So during the hearing on July 23rd, Lindsay's attorney, Kevin Reddington, had said something that made headlines in its own right, that Patrick has remarried. And that's a new fact. We didn't know that. Reddington put it this way in court, and it was very, very matter of fact. As the court is aware, they're divorced. He's remarried. He has a family. So while the divorce itself isn't a new fact, Patrick himself had revealed that in the October 2024 New Yorker profile that we had referenced in our first episode. The fact that he remarried to a reproductive endocrinologist and is reportedly living in New York right now, that came out for the first time this week in open court. Lindsay's attorney, Mr. Reddington, again, didn't hold back during this hearing. He had accused the prosecutors of trying to, quote, put on a circus calculated to inflame the jury's passions. In return and in retort, prosecutor Jennifer Sprague had pushed right back and accused the defense of trying to, in her words, whitewash what could happen to those children. So the focus, those children, right? Judge Sullivan ultimately sided with Patrick's request in part. He barred the media from recording or live streaming the 911 call, so that's not going to come out to the media, and limited public access to the autopsy. And we'll talk more about what an autopsy is, how it's performed, who performs it in a later episode. So let's talk about the defense strategy, what we know of it at this point. We've talked about it a bit before. It's the theory of the case, what they're presenting. So what we know, and continues to be a headline, is that the defense is not disputing the facts. Reddington said plainly in court, quote, "The circumstances of the death is not in dispute. The circumstances of this horrific act are not in dispute." So we're not, left to wonder. What he said is this is a why and a was she legally responsible case. Again, the defense is expected to argue that Lindsay was legally insane, that severe undertreated postpartum psychosis combined with the effects of the prescribed psychiatric medication led to this outcome. Of course, the prosecutors see it differently, and if they didn't, then we wouldn't be in this situation. They allege that this was planned, pointing to the evidence that Lindsay had sent Patrick out that night, right, to pick up medication, take up food from a restaurant, and that it all seemingly was done in an attempt to get him out of the house. Sprague's line in court was quite forward, blunt. Quote, "The Commonwealth did not choose the number of victims. The defendant did." So we're at the fault line. This entire trial is going to sit on. If you didn't know before, now you know. I feel like we had, definitely taken care and reviewed that in our first episode. So what's next? What's going on in the week ahead? There's a lot. Obviously, we have opening statements. That's where both the prosecution and the defense are going to tell us their theory of the case. They're going to go through the facts. They're going to paint a picture. They're going to set the stage. Patrick Clancy is then expected to take the stand for the prosecution as its first witness. So we will see what happens because we're not sure if that will actually take place. Today, Monday, July 27th, testimony will start right after opening statements. However, from my experience, opening statements can take all day, depending on how lengthy they are and how many breaks there are taken by the judge in the courtroom. Again, this trial is expected to take 6 to 8 weeks. We're going to have graphic, emotional evidence throughout, even despite the limitations that the judge had said last week. We know this is going to be a trying case. We're following this one closely. We're so interested to see what happens here. Because like we said before, this is where we are. We're at our inflection point. The line between crime and illness, punishment, treatment, and what happens when a medical system fails someone before the legal system ever gets involved. We're at the fine line, guys, and it's starting. So let's work through it together. We're going to have our experts on. We're going to have our court of public opinion. We're going to do it all together. Start from here. We're going to be following this closely. We're going to bring you all the latest developments. We're going to be working through this. We're going to be working through it together because this is not a surface level case. This is one where you have to really dig deep. Dig deep, think critically, be present. Thanks for joining me today, and we will see you next time on the Fine Line Podcast. Stay tuned.